The first time drawer 7 opened on its own, the body inside had already been cremated for 3 days. At 2:13 a.m. in the basement level of St. Bartholomew's Medical Center, the steel handle slid out with a soft metallic scrape that carried farther than it should have. Not loud, not sudden, just slow enough to sound deliberate, as if someone on the other side had hooked 2 fingers around the latch and pulled. Nora Bell froze with a barcode scanner in one hand and a clipboard in the other. The refrigeration room around her breathed its constant artificial winter. White light hummed overhead. Condensation ticked down copper pipes. A sweet, sour chemical smell sat in the back of her throat, mingling with bleach and old stainless steel. She stared at drawer 7 from the intake station across the room and felt a pressure gather behind her eyes, the primitive warning that something had shifted in the world by less than an inch, and yet enough to make every nerve notice. The drawer eased open another inch. There was no body assigned to it, no pending intake, no reason for movement at all. And still the toe tag clip hanging from the empty rail inside gave a tiny, almost playful tap against the metal frame. Nora didn't move. Somewhere above her, 5 floors up, Boston kept going. Ambulances whispered in and out of the bay. Night shift nurses traded cold coffee for colder gossip. The city traffic along Francis Street thinned under mist and sodium lamps. Life continued warm and loud and careless. Down here, something had opened a drawer that should have been empty. Welcome back to the channel. Before this story gets worse, and it will tell me in the comments where you're watching from tonight. If you love true horror morgue stories and the kind of nightmares that crawl under your skin and stay there, hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Because Nora Bell was about to learn that at St. Bartholomew's, the dead did not always stay where they were filed. And drawer 7 had been waiting for her. Nora had worked nights for 9 months before she understood why the day staff almost never came downstairs unless they absolutely had to. On paper, her job was simple. She was 28, steady-handed, organized, and willing to do work most people avoided, even in conversation. Officially, she was a morgue assistant attached to pathology support, intake documentation, transport coordination, chain of custody logs, preparation for examinations, inventory control, cleanup. She did not perform autopsies. She did not make cause-of-death decisions. She did not speak to families unless there was no one else available. She handled the spaces in between the silent administrative channels that moved the dead from one part of the system to another. That was what she told people anyway. The truth was that the morgue felt less like a job and more like living at the bottom of a lake. The lower level of St. Bartholomew's had no windows and almost no sound from the floors above. There were long service corridors painted hospital beige, interrupted by red exit signs and alcoves full of linen carts, chemical drums, and locked cabinets. The morgue suite sat behind a badge access door near pathology, 1 turn away from the loading elevator, and 2 turns away from the old records room no one used anymore. The fluorescent lights were too white, the floors too clean, and the air permanently chilled, as if the building itself wanted the whole wing preserved. Nora liked that at first. She had moved to Boston from western Massachusetts after her mother died of a sudden aneurysm. The months that followed had hollowed out her life so neatly that she almost admired the efficiency of grief. Friends called less. Food lost its shape and taste. Her apartment became a place where she slept badly. Night work suited the damage. It gave structure to the hours when she would have been awake anyway, and it offered a brutal, almost medicinal perspective. No matter how tangled her own thoughts became, she was in a place where every story ended the same way. The dead were easier than the living. The dead did not ask whether she was doing better. The dead did not offer inspirational sentences they had copied from the internet. The dead required procedure, respect, and accuracy. Nora could do all 3. Most nights followed routine. Bodies arrived from the ER, the ICU, surgical complications, nursing homes, apartment fires, overdoses, alleys, riverbanks. Some came with police officers, some with crying residents, some with nobody at all. Nora checked bracelets, matched names, logged personal effects, attached tags, confirmed temperatures, and assigned storage. She learned the particular quiet of a human body after the heat had gone out of it. She learned which orderlies joked too much and which residents went pale at the sight of an uncovered hand. She learned that wedding rings were sometimes harder to remove after death and that families always remembered one forgotten object too late. She also learned the rumors. Every old hospital had them. St. Bartholomew's had more than most. There were stories about the pediatric ward that used to occupy the 4th floor before a renovation in the 1980s. Stories about an elevator that occasionally stopped at the sub-basement level, even though there was no button for it anymore. Stories about a nurse who kept hearing her dead husband call her name through an unplugged intercom. Most were nonsense passed down through overworked staff, and Nora treated them that way. Hospitals compressed too much suffering into too little space. Of course, people invented myths to give shape to the residue. But one rumor surfaced again and again, always told more quietly than the others. Do not use drawer 7 if you can avoid it. The first person to say it to Nora was Luis Ortega, a transport orderly with 23 years in the hospital and a crucifix tattooed on the inside of his wrist. He said it while helping her shift an elderly man into cold storage during her 2nd week. 7 sticks, he muttered, shoving the rail in with a booted foot. What does that mean? Nora asked. Luis didn't look at her. Means if one of the other drawers is free, use one of the other drawers. She thought he was joking, mechanical issue. He gave a shrug that was too small to be casual. That's what they call it. Later, she asked Dr. Leonard Pike, the night pathologist, if there was actually something wrong with the unit. Pike was in his 60s, dry as dust, with a face that looked assembled from folded paper. He paused long enough over his coffee to tell her more than he probably intended. Drawer 7 has been repaired 6 times in 11 years, he said. Latch track hydraulic assist alignment, entire front assembly. The maintenance reports always say the same thing, no fault found or minor irregularity corrected. Then, after a few weeks, someone complains again. Complains about what? He met her eyes for only a second. That it opens. By itself. Pike took a sip. Everything opens by itself eventually in an old building. Doors swell, seals fail. Metal shifts. That's not an answer. It's the only one you're getting. He walked away after that. Nora forgot about the rumor until she started noticing smaller things. Drawer 7 did stick, but not the way old equipment usually stuck. It resisted when empty, then glided too easily when occupied. Its handle always felt colder than the others enough that she sometimes pulled her fingers away in reflex. Twice, she found it unlatched by less than an inch after swearing she had closed it completely. Once she discovered a fresh line of condensation running from its gasket down to the floor like sweat. There were other details too subtle to report. A low clicking noise from that side of the wall even when the compressor cycle was off. The impression never stronger than a passing thought that someone stood just beyond her peripheral vision whenever she cataloged remains in the 3rd row. One morning at shift change, she glanced through the refrigeration room window and thought she saw every drawer shut except 7. When she entered, it was closed. By then it was December. Boston had gone iron gray. Snow piled black at the curbs. The hospital's older pipes banged in the cold, and the basement seemed to contract around itself. Nights stretched longer. Staff shortages got worse. People snapped at one another over charting and supply counts and parking. Exhaustion made everyone more superstitious. Then, a body arrived from Dorchester that changed the temperature of Nora's life. Her name was Evelyn Voss, age 46. Found in her townhouse after a welfare check requested by a coworker. No signs of forced entry, no immediate indication of assault. She had been dead an estimated 2 days before discovery. The police report was thin routine, unfinished. But when Nora wheeled the gurney into intake and pulled back the zipped black bag for identification, she felt her stomach turn in a way no body had made it turn before. Evelyn's face was peaceful, too peaceful. Her skin had the waxy pallor Nora knew well, the early flattening of features that came after circulation failed. But Evelyn's mouth was slightly open, and behind the bluish lips sat a strange expression not on the face itself, but in the arrangement of it, something like anticipation. The eyes were closed, the brow relaxed. There were no obvious injuries beyond minor post-mortem skin changes. What bothered Nora was the right hand. Someone, Evelyn perhaps before death, had pressed the index and middle fingers so hard into the flesh of her own left wrist that crescent nail marks remained. The hand had dried in that position, as if she had died holding herself in a pulse check. Nora leaned closer to secure the ID tag and saw faint gray smudges under Evelyn's fingernails. Not dirt, not blood. Something powdery, almost metallic. Louise came in behind her with the intake forms. That her. Nora nodded. Did the report say anything unusual? Nope. Neighbors said the woman kept to herself. worked from home. Missed calls didn't answer the door. Cops found her in the upstairs hallway. In the hallway, Louise scanned the form. Yeah. Nora looked back at the body. What was she doing there? He gave the tired shrug of a man who had stopped asking questions years ago. Being dead, I guess. The available drawers were 3, 5, 7, and 11. Nora's hand hovered over the list. Put her in 5, Louise said quickly. Why? She looks light. That doesn't matter. It does to me. She almost smiled, but the room felt too still for humor. Together, they transferred Evelyn into drawer 5, secured the tray, closed the latch, and completed the chain of intake. As Nora signed the log, she noticed one final line in the police note: home thermostat discovered off. Interior temperature 46 degrees. That was odd enough to sit in her mind for the rest of the shift. At 2:13 a.m., 3 nights later, drawer 7 opened on its own for the first time while Nora was alone. It had no body inside. Evelyn Voss had been released that afternoon for cremation. Every other decedent currently in storage had been accounted for. Yet the drawer slid open as though answering an invisible summons. Nora approached slowly, pulse fluttering in her throat. She expected to find a latch failure or some warped alignment. She expected metal and logic. She was good with logic. The tray inside gleamed under fluorescent light, empty except for the toe tag clip and a rectangular patch of frost near the center. Not a random pattern, not spilled condensation. 2 parallel streaks cut through the frost from the back of the tray toward the front as though something narrow had been dragged outward. Nora stared until the scanner in her hand beeped from the pressure of her grip. "Stop it," she whispered, though she didn't know whether she was speaking to herself or the room. She shoved the drawer closed harder than necessary, tested the latch twice, and stepped away. When she returned at dawn with Dr. Pike to review overnight paperwork, drawer 7 was open again. Only this time, lying on the empty tray was a hospital wristband. The printed name had blurred from moisture, but Nora could still read the first letters. EV. Pike took one look at the band and went absolutely blank. Not afraid, not confused. Blank in the cold, disciplined way of a man locking something violent behind the eyes. "Where did you find that?" he asked. "It was in the drawer." "That is impossible." "I know it is." He picked up the wristband with gloved fingers. "Did anyone come down here?" "Number. Anyone at all." "Number." Pike folded the band into his palm. "Then someone is playing a stupid game." Nora watched him. "You don't believe that?" He didn't answer. He walked to drawer 7, examined the rail, then closed it with a careful push. "Do not document this." "What?" "You heard me. That's not how this works." "That is exactly how this works," he snapped, sudden and sharp enough to make her flinch. "You are going to discard that memory, continue doing your job, and let me worry about equipment issues." Nora's heartbeat slowed into something colder. Was Evelyn Voss in this drawer before I started here? Pike's silence confirmed more than words could have. "What happened?" she asked. He removed his gloves, one finger at a time. "Nothing happened." "Then why are you pale?" "Miss Bell." His voice flattened. "Some things in a hospital become stories because overworked people need stories. Do not join them." He left with the wristband in his pocket. That should have been the end of it. It should have become one more strange night in a place built on strange nights. Instead, the next evening, Nora found a voicemail on her phone at 8:07 p.m. from an unknown number. The transcript app had produced only 2 words. Cold enough. There was no audio attached, just static. Nora listened 3 times before her shift started, standing in the employee stairwell with one hand on the rail. The static had texture to it, a grainy, wet hiss like air moving through an open freezer. Somewhere inside it, at the very end, something clicked. Not like a phone disconnecting, like a latch releasing. That night, she checked the intake board before badging into the morgue. No new arrivals assigned to storage. No police holds expected. Routine inventory only. Still, the moment she entered, she knew something was wrong. The refrigeration room door stood open by 2 inches. Nora distinctly remembered closing it before leaving that morning. She set her coffee down untouched. The corridor behind her was empty. The fluorescent lights hummed. Farther off, a cartwheel squeaked and faded. "Nora," she said softly to herself, as if naming her own body would keep it obedient. Then she pushed the door open. Every drawer was closed, except 7. It protruded farther this time, nearly halfway out. The tray inside held something dark near the head end. From where she stood, it looked at first like a fold of cloth. Then she stepped closer and saw hair. Human hair. Dark blonde, damp-looking, spread thinly across the steel like weed in shallow water. Nora stopped breathing for a moment. It couldn't be real. It couldn't. Bodies shed hair. Fibers clung. Contamination occurred. There were explanations. She forced herself forward until the cold bit through her scrubs. The hair was attached to a piece of scalp no larger than a playing card. No blood. No fresh tissue. Just a ragged strip of pale skin with follicles embedded in it, as if someone had carefully peeled the memory of a head away and left it there. Her stomach lurched. She staggered back, nearly slipping. The overhead light flickered once. Then from somewhere behind the far wall, she heard a woman humming. Not singing, not words. Just a wavering little tune, intimate and tuneless, the kind of thing a person might do without realizing while folding laundry or waiting for water to boil. Nora turned so fast, pain shot down her neck. The room was empty. The humming continued for 5 more seconds, then stopped. She backed out of the refrigeration room, nearly ran to the phone at the workstation, and called security. By the time 2 officers arrived, drawer 7 was shut, sealed, and empty. No hair, no tissue, no evidence. The officers checked cameras in the basement corridors and found no unauthorized entry. They wrote up a disturbance report with the bored politeness of men already deciding it would go nowhere. Dr. Pike arrived 40 minutes later, summoned from upstairs. "Tell me exactly what you heard," he said. Nora did. He listened without interrupting. When she finished, he rubbed his face and looked older than usual. "Did you touch anything?" "Number. Did you photograph it?" "No, I was trying not to throw up." He nodded once. "Good. Good. If there is no photograph, then there is no image to circulate." Nora stared at him. "That's your concern right now." His eyes shifted toward the refrigeration room. "My concern is keeping this hospital from turning into a circus." "Something is happening in there." "Yes," he said quietly. "I know." That was the first honest sentence he had given her. She waited. Pike took off his glasses and cleaned them with a handkerchief he didn't need. "You asked if Evelyn Voss had ever been in drawer 7. She had." Nora said nothing. "She came through our service 14 months ago. First admission was not as a decedent. She was a patient." The room seemed to tighten. For what? Homicidal ideation, self-harm, paranoid delusions. She claimed something in her house kept opening the cold places, refrigerator, freezer, cellar door, and the bulkhead. She described finding dead things moved from one place to another. A fox on the basement steps. Birds arranged in her sink. Typical psychotic patterning, it seemed. She was held for observation. Sedated. Then one night she went missing from her room for 12 minutes. Missing. She was found downstairs. Here. His voice thinned. Inside drawer 7. Nora felt the blood leave her face. "That's not possible." "No, it isn't." "How did she get into a locked morgue?" "We never established that." "Was she alive?" Pike looked at her with a fatigue so deep it resembled sorrow. "Barely. Hypothermic. Bradycardic. Her fingers torn to the nail beds from trying to pull something. She kept repeating the same phrase for 6 hours. "What phrase?" Pike swallowed. "It was warmer when it was full." Silence expanded between them. "What happened after that?" Nora asked. She stabilized. Psychiatry transferred her to a private facility after 2 weeks. I heard she improved for a while. He replaced his glasses. Then last week she died. In her hallway, Nora said. "Yes." Nora thought of the thermostat turned off. The fingers pressed to the wrist. The metallic dust under the nails. "Why didn't anyone tell me any of this?" Pike gave a bleak smile. "Because I intended to retire without ever discussing it again." Before Nora could answer, the phone at the workstation rang. Both of them jumped. She picked it up on the second ring. Morgue intake bell speaking. Static whispered against her ear. Then clearly a woman's voice said, "He doesn't like empty drawers." The line went dead. Pike's face told her he had heard the words from where he stood. Neither of them moved for several seconds. Finally, he said, "Lock the suite. We are going to records." The old records room sat down the hall behind a steel fire door that stuck at the hinge. Nora had passed it dozens of times without going in. Inside, shelves rose to the ceiling, packed with archive boxes and obsolete binders that smelled of dust cardboard and damp paper. A single desk lamp cast a yellow circle in the dark. Pike moved with surprising purpose through the stacks, counting under his breath, until he found a row labeled Morgue Maintenance /Incidents/1996 to 2015. He pulled a box free, carried it to the desk, and opened it. Inside were repair tickets, refrigeration service reports, floor plans, and a thinner folder without a barcode. The tab had no official label. Someone had written on it in pen 7. Pike rested his hand on it without opening it. "This stays between us," Nora said. "If this is criminal, I'm not helping you hide it." "I know." He looked at her. "That is precisely why I'm showing you." He opened the folder. The first document was a photocopied newspaper clipping from 1978. The headline described a winter blackout in Boston that had disrupted several hospitals. St. Bartholomew's was mentioned in a smaller paragraph near the bottom: generator failure in the pathology wing, temporary refrigeration loss, internal review pending. Under the clipping sat a typed memo from the hospital administrator dated 2 weeks later. Most of it concerned equipment replacement. One section had been underlined in red. One unidentified male decedent received during outage was misplaced during transfer and not recovered until restoration of service. Documentation irregularities remain unresolved. Internal handling only. Nora frowned. Misplaced. Pike slid another page toward her. It was a handwritten statement from an orderly named Michael Reeve. When the power failed, some of the drawers did not lock right. We were moving the remains manually to preserve them with dry ice until the engineers restored the system. I remember one male, John Doe from South Boston's severe exposure case, brought in very cold, almost rigid. We lost track during the confusion. At approximately 3:10 a.m., I heard movement in Unit B. Drawer 7 was open. I believe someone had reopened it. I pushed it shut. At 4 a.m., it was open again. Dr. Halpern instructed me not to speak further on the matter. Below that was another page, this one water-stained and harder to read. A notation at the top said, "Unfiled/do not duplicate. Subject not identified. No next of kin. Found under bridge pilings near harbor during freeze. Unusual tissue temperature on intake. Extreme cold to touch inconsistent with environment after transport. Assistant reported audible vocalization after certification. No corroboration. Removed to temporary storage pending examination." Nora looked up slowly. Vocalization. Pike nodded once. "Rumor says the exposure victim was declared dead in the field, revived briefly in transport, then coded again in the ER. In 1978, records were less exact at 3 in the morning during a blackout." "You think they put a living man in storage?" "I think something went wrong," Pike said. "And I think the hospital buried the mistake." Nora flipped farther. There were later entries spanning decades: maintenance complaints, informal notes, incident summaries. Most were vague. Drawer found ajar. Unexplained cold concentration. Personal items misplaced, then recovered inside Unit 7. Staff distress. One resignation. Then she found a photocopied psych evaluation for Evelyn Voss from 14 months ago. In the margin, in shaky handwriting that had pressed hard enough to dent the paper, Evelyn had written over and over, "Not a man/not alone/ it borrows the ones who freeze." Nora's skin crawled. "What does that mean?" she whispered. Pike said, "I don't know." "Is that true?" He looked away. Before she could push harder, a sound moved through the records room. Not from the hallway, not from the ceiling, from inside the box on the desk. A soft, deliberate tap. Nora jerked back. Pike snatched the folder open wider. At the bottom of the box, beneath the papers they had already removed, lay an old cassette tape in a cracked plastic case. A label in faded marker read, "Interview, Reeve/January 19th, 78. The tapping came again. No machine moved. Nothing shifted. And still the tape case clicked once against the cardboard as though nudged from within. Pike stared at it. "I have never seen this. Do we have a player?" He nodded slowly. "In pathology. For dictation archives." The walk back felt unreal. The hospital corridor seemed longer than before, its corners less certain. Every hum of ventilation sounded like breath. Nora kept looking over her shoulder, certain someone trailed just beyond view. They entered the pathology office, found an old multimedia deck in a supply cabinet, and set the cassette inside. For 3 seconds, there was only hiss. Then a male voice emerged, shaky and young. "Interview begins January 19th, 1978. Subject orderly Michael Reeve. Conducted by Administrator Halpern." A second voice clipped, an impatient state again. "What you believe you saw." Reeve answered after a long swallow. "I didn't see it straight. Not all of it. The outage lights were weak. but the drawer was open. 7. And I thought the John Doe was trying to crawl out. Paper rustled on the tape. Halpern said, "Trying." "Yes, sir." Only Reeve breathed hard near the microphone. Only he was farther back than he should have been, like the tray had gotten deeper. That's stupid, I know, but he was down in there, and I could hear him moving and choking, and there was another sound too, like teeth, like a mouth chewing ice. Pike went very still beside Nora. "Halpern, were you under the influence of any substance?" "Reeve, no, sir. I pushed the drawer shut because I thought if he was alive, we needed help. But when I put my hands on the handle, something on the other side pulled back. Strong, real strong. Then it let go. A pause. Hiss. Then Reeve, again voice falling apart. When we opened it later, there was only one body. But it wasn't where we left it. It was turned around. Feet inward. Face toward the door. And its mouth was open wider than it should open, like it had been stretched. Halpern said sharply, "That is enough!" Reeve burst out. It said my name. The tape ended in a violent grind of static. Nora realized her own nails were digging into her palm. Pike ejected the cassette with trembling fingers. "This never existed," he murmured, perhaps to himself. Nora said, "How many people know? Anyone who knew enough either left died or learned silence. And you?" He gave a sad, thin smile. "I learned silence. That might still have been survivable if the strange activity had stayed downstairs. It didn't. Over the next 4 nights, the hospital itself seemed to catch the infection. A phlebotomist found blood vials stacked in a warming cabinet that no one had opened. An ICU nurse reported hearing a patient in coded room 612 whispering, "Oh," too cold after death had already been pronounced. Security footage from a service elevator showed the doors opening on B2 at 2:13 a.m. to an empty hall, then closing again as if someone invisible had entered. Twice, staff on unrelated floors complained that refrigerated medication units stood open without alarm. Maintenance found nothing wrong. Nora stopped sleeping properly. Whenever she drifted off, she dreamed of long white drawers lining a corridor with no walls, just blackness between them. In the dream, every handle was numbered 7. Worse, she began noticing changes in temperature around herself. The corners of her apartment turned cold even when the radiator hissed. A carton of milk she had just taken from the fridge felt warm at the top and freezing at the bottom. One morning, she woke to find the inside of her bedroom window furred with delicate ice, though the weather outside was above freezing and every neighboring pane remained clear. On the glass traced through the frost from the inside were 2 words, "Still empty." She didn't go to work that night. She almost quit. She sat at her kitchen table with her phone in hand, staring at Dr. Pike's number while dawn colored the buildings across the street in bruised purple. But quitting felt childish in the face of what was happening. If this thing had followed Evelyn Voss from the hospital to her townhouse and then somehow reached back after death, walking away might not mean escape. It might simply mean surrendering the only place where records existed. So Nora returned the next evening armed with a digital thermometer, a flashlight, a rosary she didn't believe in but had bought from a 24-hour pharmacy, and a trembling determination that felt a lot like stupidity. Pike was already waiting in the suite. He had not shaved. "I called a friend," he said. "What kind of friend?" "A retired hospital chaplain who also happened to have a degree in folklore." Nora blinked. "That is an insane sentence. He'll fit right in." Father Thomas Keene arrived 10 minutes later in a charcoal coat and snow-damp shoes, carrying no Bible and no theatrical equipment, only a leather satchel and the exhausted expression of a man who had spent many years being summoned after rational explanations failed. He was in his 70s, broad-faced, with clear blue eyes that missed very little. After listening to the summary without interruption, he asked to see drawer 7. The refrigeration room seemed to notice him when he entered. Nora felt that instantly. The air changed, not colder, but more attentive, the way a room changes when a sleeping person opens their eyes. Keene stood before drawer 7 and rested 2 fingers lightly on the handle. "Do not open it," Pike said. Keene did not move. "Something happened here in great fear," he murmured. Nora almost asked how he could know that, but the answer was obvious. Places learned fear the way fabric learned smoke. "What do you think it is?" she asked. Keene looked at the numbered front. Not a ghost in the simple sense. More like an appetite taught a shape by violence. Pike made a skeptical sound, but not a dismissive one. Keene continued. When death occurs badly, confusion, abandonment, betrayal of the body. Sometimes people leave behind more than memory. Most of it fades. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes the place keeps reenacting the harm until enough attention feeds it into something worse. Nora thought of the exposure victim possibly alive, sealed in cold metal during a blackout while people upstairs fought chaos. And Evelyn, she likely noticed it because she was already vulnerable. Some minds are more porous under strain. Once she perceived it, it learned her. Fear is an invitation. He finally withdrew his hand. Have either of you heard it speak in a familiar voice? Nora hesitated. Not familiar, just a woman. Pike said nothing. Keene turned to him. Doctor. Pike's mouth tightened. Years ago, I heard my wife's voice in here after her funeral. Nora stared. Pike had never once mentioned a wife. Keene nodded as though that settled something. Then it borrows. It uses absence like a mold. What does it want? Nora asked. The chaplain's gaze went back to drawer 7. To be full. No one said anything after that. Keene opened his satchel and took out a small silver vial, a folded linen cloth, and a thin book so worn its spine had lost the title. I do not promise miracles, he said, but I do know that some things weaken when named and denied repetition. He asked Nora for the incident records related to the unidentified exposure victim and Evelyn Voss. He read for 20 minutes in silence. Then he requested they wheel in an empty gurney and position it opposite the drawer. Why? Nora asked. Because if it wants its story repeated, Keene said, we are going to interrupt the ending. At 2:07 a.m., they turned off every light in the refrigeration room except the oversing fixture near the door. Shadows filled the corners between the storage columns. Their breath fogged. Nora watched the thermometer in her hand fall from 38 degrees to 31 in less than a minute. Pike whispered, "This is impossible." Keene said, "So is most grief." At 2:12, the latch on drawer 7 clicked. No one touched it. The drawer slid out 3 inches, then 6. The metal made that same soft scraping sound Nora had first heard nights earlier, only now it seemed layered with something wet underneath. The thermometer dropped to 26. Frost bloomed across the edges of the handle in white veins. Nora's heart slammed so hard it blurred her vision. The drawer kept opening. At first, the tray looked empty. Then a shape gathered in the darkness at the back, not appearing all at once, but condensing out of cold. Something crouched there where no human body could fit too long in the torso, joints tucked, wrong face bowed. Skin glimmered pale and stretched, then sank in and out of sight like meat seen beneath black water. And around it, crowding close, were glimpses of others. A woman's wrist with bitten nails, a man's frozen cheek, a child-sized hand, not whole bodies but stolen fragments overlapping as if the thing had clothed itself in remembered dead. Nora smelled harbor water and freezer burn. The bowed face lifted. It had no fixed features. For an instant, it was the exposure victim from the 1978 intake photo, ice-whitened lashes, split lips, beard crusted in frost. Then it shifted. Evelyn Voss looked out at them, eyes open now and bright with terror. Then Pike's wife, if photographs in his office had told the truth. Then, horribly, Nora's mother. Not accurate, not alive, just near enough to rip the breath from her. Nora, it said in her mother's voice, soft and urgent. "I'm cold." Her knees nearly gave out. Keene stepped forward and snapped the linen cloth open. "You were not given to this place," he said, his voice suddenly iron. "You were mishandled, unnamed, and left, but you do not own what followed." The thing's face blurred, then settled again into Nora's mother with a ruined smile. "She left me too," Nora, Pike barked, and she realized she had taken 3 unconscious steps toward the drawer. Keene sprinkled liquid from the vial across the threshold. The drops froze where they landed. The thing inside recoiled with a sound like 100 fingernails dragged across metal. The lights overhead flashed. All the other drawers in the room clicked at once. Nora spun in place as handles eased outward up and down both walls, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, 9. Opening by inches, then more, a chorus of slow steel mouths. Cold air rushed over her ankles. Somewhere beneath the scraping came whispers, not words at first, but breaths, many of them, the little involuntary noises people make while sleeping or dying. Pike cursed under his breath. "Close them." Nora grabbed drawer 3 and shoved. It resisted like a body leaning from the other side. She put all her weight into it until it slammed shut. Behind her, another drawer rolled open farther, banging against its stop. Keen began reading from the old book in a language Nora didn't know. Not dramatic, not shouted, measured and relentless. Drawer 7 came all the way out. The thing unfolded. It did not climb the way an animal would. It unthreaded itself from the narrow space, one impossible length at a time, as if the drawer opened not into a refrigerated compartment, but into a shaft descending forever into dark. Limbs emerged coated in crystals. A shoulder, then another, then a neck too long for any human anatomy. Its skin was the color of old wax under blue ice. Embedded within it were shapes that pressed outward and retreated, human knuckles, teeth, eyelids, all moving beneath the surface like trapped fish. Nora stumbled backward into the gurney. The entity dropped to the floor without sound. Where its feet touched frost spread in branching patterns. It turned its head toward Pike first. When it spoke, it used the voice of his dead wife. "Leo," it whispered. "You left before I woke up." Pike made a noise Nora would remember for the rest of her life, a raw, involuntary break in a man who had spent decades containing himself. The thing took one gliding step toward him. Keen moved between them and flung the remainder of the silver vial into its chest. The creature convulsed. For 1 second, its borrowed skin went transparent, and Nora saw not organs, but packed human forms inside, folded together in layers, mouths open in silent white screams. The room shook with a burst of cold so intense, the sink pipes rang. Then every drawer slammed shut simultaneously. The sound was like a gunshot inside a coffin. Nora screamed and covered her ears. When she looked again, the thing had not vanished. It was halfway across the room now, one arm hooked around the gurney rail. The metal hissed beneath its grip. It stared at Nora with a face rapidly becoming her own. Same dark hair, same tired eyes, same frightened mouth. "You know." "Empty," it said in her voice. "That's why he showed me you." "Who?" she whispered. Its head twitched toward drawer 7, not answering, indicating. The drawer behind it stood open again, though none of them had touched it. And this time Nora saw something at the back that made the rest of the horror rearrange itself into a new pattern. There was a room in there. Not a compartment. A room. Dark, tiled deep. She saw the flash of a wall light, the corner of a rusted drain, and what might have been dozens of old hospital drawers lining a chamber much larger than physics allowed. At the center lay a gurney. On it, barely visible, was a human shape strapped down with black restraints. The figure lifted its head. Its mouth moved. Nora heard the words in her own skull, not in the room. "Still alive." Then the creature lunged. Pike hit it with the steel leg of a stool, knocking its shoulder sideways with a crack like brittle wood. Keen shouted for Nora to pull the gurney. She grabbed and yanked. The empty gurney rolled between them and the thing at the exact moment it seized forward, colliding with metal instead of flesh. Its arm burst through the mattress pad as though stabbing water. Frost raced up the frame toward Nora's hands. She released it with a cry. Keen pressed the linen cloth, now marked with a dark cross, stitched into one corner against the creature's back. It shrieked in layered voices, male, female. Old, young, some human, and some not quite. Pike shoved from the side, driving it toward the open drawer. "It wants the story repeated," Keen yelled. "Break the pattern," how Nora shouted. "Don't let it take one living body into the cold." The creature twisted with impossible flexibility and caught Pike by the wrist. Frost leapt up his sleeve. He gasped and dropped to one knee. Its face changed again, flashing rapidly through features like shuffled photographs until it found the one that hurt most, Pike's wife. Then Evelyn, then Nora's mother, then Nora herself, smiling with split lips. "Come inside," it breathed. Nora saw Pike's shoes skid on the wet floor as it dragged him inch by inch toward drawer 7. She did the only thing that occurred to her. She snatched the clipboard from the counter, ripped off the top intake form, and shouted into the room with all the force panic could give her. "Unknown male harbor exposure. Case intake error. Not processed. Not abandoned. Not yours." The creature faltered. Keen's eyes snapped to her. Again, Nora's voice shook. "You were not stored. You were not forgotten. You were a patient. Do you hear me? A person, not a drawer, not a mistake." For the first time, the shape in the room beyond drawer 7 became clearer, the restrained figure on the distant gurney lifting its head higher as if listening through decades. The entity screamed. Its grip loosened on Pike. Nora stepped forward, terror burning straight through into fury. Evelyn Voss was not yours either. She was sick and scared and alive. You don't get to wear them. You don't get to keep anybody. The temperature plunged. Her eyelashes crusted white. The open drawer yawned wider, revealing more of the impossible chamber behind it. Rows and rows of dark compartments. Drains clogged with frost. Moving shapes along the walls that might have been people or only coats hung in cold. The restrained figure on the far gurney opened its mouth wider. This time the sound reached the room. A hoarse, ruined male voice gasped, "Close." Pike, still half on the floor, understood first. With his unfrozen hand, he seized the wheel lock on the empty gurney and rammed it forward. Keene shoved with him. Nora threw her shoulder in. The gurney smashed into the creature, folding it against the frame of drawer 7. Its body split in places like slush-packed skin over glass. Faces surged beneath the surface, all trying to get out at once. "Now," Keene shouted. Together they drove. The creature bent backward into the open compartment, shrieking in a storm of stolen voices. As it collapsed inward, the room beyond flickered tile restraints, distant light, the strapped figure twisting once, a hand lifting, as if reaching toward them from 1978 or someplace even farther away. Then Nora grabbed the drawer handle. It was so cold the skin of her palm stuck instantly. She screamed, tore downward with all her strength, and slammed drawer 7 shut. Something on the other side hit back hard enough to dent the steel outward. Once, twice. On the third impact, the lights exploded into darkness. For 2 full seconds, there was nothing but black breath and the sound of metal straining. Then emergency lights came on in blood-red dimness. Drawer 7 was closed. A long crack ran across its front panel. Frost seeped from the seam and then slowly stopped. No one spoke. Pike sat on the floor, cradling his wrist. Keene leaned against the counter, breathing as though he had run a mile uphill. Nora looked down at her own right palm and saw a crescent-shaped patch of skin torn away where the frozen handle had taken it. The refrigeration room remained silent. Every other drawer was shut. At 3:06 a.m., the power stabilized. Maintenance blamed a localized breaker overload. Security found no intruder, no structural breach, no obvious cause. The formal incident report, heavily edited by administration before sunrise, described a refrigeration malfunction, electrical short, and minor staff injuries. Father Keene told them privately that places like this often slept after resistance. Slept, Nora repeated. He did not apologize for the word. Pike's wrist was not broken, but the flesh from fingertips to forearm developed a white, numb burn that no physician on staff liked the look of. He took emergency leave the next day. Before he left, he handed Nora the folder marked 7 and said, "Keep copies somewhere off-site. You're not coming back." He hesitated. "I genuinely don't know." For 48 hours, nothing happened. Drawer 7 stayed shut. The basement temperature returned to normal. No more calls. No voices and static. No cold spots in Nora's apartment. She slept for 11 hours straight and woke feeling not rested but temporarily unchaste. Hospital administration replaced the damaged front panel on the drawer unit with astonishing speed. A vice president from facilities came downstairs personally to assure staff that legacy equipment anomalies had been corrected. 2 maintenance contractors removed the old faceplate without comment. Nora watched from intake and saw that neither man would meet the drawer directly. One crossed himself when he thought no one was looking. By the weekend, routine resumed. Bodies arrived. Forms were signed. Coffee cooled in paper cups. Life, or what passed for it in a hospital basement, reassembled around procedure. Nora almost believed they had contained it. Then she reviewed the chain of custody logs from the night of the incident and found a discrepancy. During the hour when the power failed, one occupied drawer had no corresponding decedent record. It was not 7. It was 11. Nora rechecked the numbers 3 times. There should have been 6 bodies in storage that night. The paperwork accounted for 5 after the emergency. The missing entry was not a clerical omission, but a perfect absence, as if one identity had been lifted cleanly out of the system. Security footage from the corridor outside the refrigeration room during the blackout showed nothing useful except the red wash of emergency lights. She went to the drawer itself. Empty. No tag. No trace. No one remembered moving a body from 11 because officially no body had been in 11 at all. That same afternoon, she called the funeral home listed on the final release sheet for each decedent stored that night. All 5 confirmed receipt. One was missing. No record, no transport, no cremation, no burial. The dead had balanced its books by taking one. Nora did not tell administration. She told Keene instead. He listened, then said something she wished he hadn't. Maybe it left hungry, he said. Maybe it left fed. By then, spring had begun leaning against Boston in small, dirty ways. Snow withdrew into gutters. The harbor smelled less metallic. People on the sidewalks unzipped coats and acted as though winter had not spent months teaching the city how close to the bone it could cut. The ordinary world looked offensively normal. Nora considered leaving the hospital. She updated her resume. She searched positions in Worcester, Providence, even out of state. But every time she reached the application page, her right palm ached where the handle had frozen her, and she imagined a drawer somewhere else opening to welcome what she carried with her. Because she did carry something. It started with the cold, not around her, in her, a little pocket of chill behind the breastbone present even under hot showers. Then came the sounds. Once or twice a week, always just before sleep, she heard a steel latch release from somewhere inside her apartment. The kitchen refrigerator would still be closed. So would the freezer, the windows, the medicine cabinet. Yet the sound came anyway, intimate and near. One night she woke with her hand inside the open freezer, fingers numb, no memory of getting out of bed. Another morning she found condensation on her bathroom mirror gathered into a single number. 7. She scrubbed it away so hard she cracked a nail. By April, Dr. Pike had officially retired. The hospital replaced him with a younger pathologist who knew nothing about old incidents and laughed when Nora asked whether any drawer assignments could be permanently retired for maintenance superstition reasons. Father Keene called once a week. Luis refused to enter the refrigeration room alone anymore. And then, on a Tuesday, just after 2 a.m., a new body arrived from South Boston. Male, unidentified, found near harbor pilings during an unseasonable cold snap off the water. Severe exposure. No next of kin, no wallet. Approximate age 50. When Nora read the intake summary, the paper went soft in her hands. Luis saw her face and said, "What?" She handed him the form. He read, then looked toward the storage room with naked fear. "No, I know. Number." The available drawers were 2, 7, and 11. Outside, somewhere far above them, a siren moved through wet streets. Nora stared at the line item for drawer assignment while the refrigeration unit hummed, and the cold in her chest bloomed outward like a flower opening under ice. Behind the closed door of storage, a latch clicked. Just once, waiting. Nora did not look at Luis. She did not look at the body bag on the gurney. Very slowly, she raised her right hand, the one marked by frozen metal, and saw that under the fluorescent light, the half-moon scar in her palm had darkened into something that looked almost like a tiny handle. Then her phone vibrated in her scrub pocket. Unknown number. Voicemail received. The transcript loaded by itself before she even opened it. It's warmer when you're full. And from the other side of the storage room door, something long and patient pulled drawer 7 open.